Sunday, proudly sponsored by Al Basti Equiworld Dubai.
Hello everyone, welcome to some great guests on this morning's show. Lots of interesting topics for debate, and we're reflecting on some excellent racing over the past week. And we can now show you what we've got coming up in today's edition of Nick Luck's show. We're joined in the studio by Charlie Post, who recently announced his retirement from race riding. We'll look back on a fantastic few days of racing from the Darley Newmarket. And we'll also reflect on a fantastic performance from 10 sovereigns in the July Cup. News on multiple Group 1 winning filly Lawrence. And we're live at Newmarket this morning from Palace House with Tom Stanley. We're also hoping to hear from jockey Rob Hornby, who won on Pavoyne in the John Smith's Cup yesterday at York, and a trainer who has been in fantastic form all year long, but weeks. Mark Johnston, more big winners for him at Newmarket over the last few days. Charlie Post is here in the studio with us, and we'll be chatting to him very shortly. But time to pay our first visit of the morning to HQ and to Tom Stanley.
Indeed. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Newmarket. It is, of course, the morning after the three-day Moet et Chandon July Festival. I am here in Newmarket, and specifically at Palace House. There's the old palace just behind me at the National Heritage Centre for Horse Racing and Sporting Art. We'll be having a little look at what there is to do here over the next few hours. That includes a Stubbs exhibition we're going to go and take a look at. We'll be talking to Dr. Stephen Parisian, who is the Chief of Palace House, and we'll also, which I'm very excited about, head out the back and see superstar stayer who resides here currently for his last day here as well. The great Big Orange is here, so we're going to be going and saying a hello to him. We'll also be just down the road to see Sir Michael Stout a couple of days after his record equalling 6th win in the Falmouth Stakes, going and saying hello to Voracious as well this morning. So lots to get on with. I'm tempted, as they're setting up, myself a coffee, but I should probably get some work done. So for now, back to you, Rishi.
He's such a tease that time. Exciting morning ahead of him. Really looking forward to his visit to Sir Michael Stouts. But Charlie Post, it's great to have you here. And some people might say, considering those who know you best, surprising to have you here, considering the last few days. Where have you been?
So I've actually been on my stag do in Pamplona. So we did the bull run, and I got back late last night, and yeah, it's been a tough few days, mate. To be honest, yeah.
Well, you look remarkably well. Is that just from years of practice at this sort of thing?
Surely not. No, to be honest, I think my wife-to-be has been a major help in moisturising me on the way down and making sure that I look as good as possible.
It's just past 9. I don't know what your wife does to you on the way down. But tell us about what happened in Pamplona and your experience there.
So I wanted to do something completely different for my stag do. I've been with other friends. Andrew Tinkley went to Vegas, Tom Messenger. I thought I want to do something that's going to frighten the living daylights out of them and they're going to remember forever. And so, yeah, the bull run was what we decided to do. And early on Friday morning, which was actually my birthday as well, we got up at about 5:30 in the morning, went down to wait on the street, anticipation to the 8 o'clock start time, and then we ran like hell.
Okay, well, we do have, courtesy of the fabulous world of social media, some footage of what took place. So now that I've seen it and you've done it, why?
I don't know. It's just something I've always wanted to do. You know, as in, I retired on Wednesday or whatever, and thought, you know, I'd still need more adrenaline in my life, so that's what we're going to go for.
Interesting, in a sense, to talk about that, because the first thing that a lot of ex-sportsmen do when they retire is they have to cope with the fact the adrenaline is gone. And I know that we talk about it and we laugh about that particular scenario, but it is quite a serious issue, because some with stepping away from something that's provided such a rush for so many years.
I think it's incredibly tough. I mean, the one thing I've said throughout is I feel incredibly fortunate that I've been sort of building up to the next stage of my life and career for a long time, and I've made. I wanted to immerse myself in that rather than race riding now. But for a lot of guys, and girls, sorry, you pack up on whichever day, and you've immediately got to think, well, what am I actually going to do with the rest of my life? And race riding is incredible. Being a professional footballer where you're going to have enough money to be set up for life, you've all of a sudden got the realisation that I need to earn a living, and what am I going to do next? And for a lot of people, trying to find something that gives you the same sort of thrill and it's very tricky.
36 years old. Happy birthday, as you said. You celebrated your 36th birthday earlier this week. So why retire? That is relatively young in the racing world for riders. So why so soon?
Over the last few years, my girlfriend and I have built this yard up where we break in, pre-train for a lot of professional yards, Ollie Murphy, Dan Skelton, John Joe O'Neill, and we also produce young horses alongside the Irish model. So we buy unbroken 3-year-olds on spec, and hopefully they'll win a point-to-point on debut in the following spring and be sold for big profit is the ideal. And so over the last few years, as our numbers have built up, I think we moved to the RDO with 8 horses. We had about 50 in most of the time. During my time, the ability to go and ride out had become less and less. It was maybe 4 years ago I was riding out 4 days a week. To this year, I was hardly able to ride out at all. And as a jump jockey especially, if you're not riding out every day, you cannot keep busy. And it was actually starting, I think I only had 80-odd rides last season. You become a bit part player, you know, you're no longer in it. And it's just not the way I wanted to carry on. And so for me, now was the right time.
Okay, we'll come back to that latter point. Let's go back to the beginning if we can, and for you in racing, and why you wanted to pursue a career as a jockey. And you actually started on the flat. I think your first ride was on the flat. Yeah,
no, I was just obsessed with sport all the way through as a kid, and whether rugby, football, hockey, whatever. And riding came to me sort of when I was, I don't know, 10 or 11. I went to a riding school with a mate, and I just loved the thrill of going fast. I think probably most people that become jockeys, that's the immediate thing that grabs you, that you're on something that you're in control of to a degree, but it's, you know, it's quite a crazy fun way to earn a living, you know. And so it went from there. I always wanted to be a jump jockey, but when I left school, I think I was about 7.5 stone and a little over 5 foot tall. So Geraldine suggested the right way to go would be to ride on the flat initially. And then as you get a bit older, and I got bigger and switched over, and you realise money's more important, I think, well, you know what, I'd have probably been better off earning a career on the flat, you know. Well,
that's one of the things that a lot of the financial strain of things. Would you said that when you're learning about the game, that's such a hard time for a youngster because the finances are so poor at that level?
I think it's tough. Like I say, as a jockey, you're never going to get rich, you know. As in, well, very few of us are. But you're earning a decent living. It's an incredible lifestyle. I'm not sure if I'd always go along with, like, I think Hayley Turner said, work in racing, you never work in. Don't agree with, to be honest. And there's a lot of hard graft, you know, as in, especially you know, to the staff that work in the yard, and especially as a jockey, it is hard. It's mentally tough. There are so many things outside of what the people see on the TV that you the existence, and there is no doubt financially that can be a big strain on lads as well.
So you start off in racing, and there are the strains that go with it, or the stresses that go with it, but there are also things that you learn. I think you speak about the time that you spend, and learn to do things the right way, learn things as a person as much as anything else. And although, yes, things are difficult and it's hard work, there are other benefits that perhaps can complement that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not being negative. It's the most thing in the world, you know, as in I wouldn't change what's happened to me for all the money in the world. It's been the best. But I mean, certainly at Geraldine's, you're taught to do things the right way, you know, and I actually do think within the industry we're losing that, you know, that more of like an apprenticeship way where you were tied into a yard and you had to stay there and do things right. And she, like I say, she's the most wonderful lady, and she taught me so much about riding and horses and all that. But she was the toughest person I've ever worked for. 100%.
Well, you went to Richard Fahey's after that, didn't you? So how did the comparison?
Richards was a cakewalk by comparison, you know. As in,
I bet he'd be glad to hear that.
I mean, I remember as a kid, I had a little motorbike going. I used to go to the gym twice a day. I remember Geraldine pulling me in the office one day and said, look, you know, if you going to the gym is for married couples that don't like spending time with each other anymore. If you want to get yourself properly fit, you want to buy a bike, take the saddle off it, and you should be watching your weight as well. Get on the gallop with a sweatsuit, run round the gallop and all that. But in a great way, as in she gave me a thorough grounding in life. And I think also as a jockey, you learn life skills that can switch over into the outside world very, very easily, you know.
Can you give me an example of that?
Well, you become a great timekeeper. To do well in the job, you have to become a very good communicator. You know, the job now so much is all about putting on a show and providing entertainment for owners and all that. If you can't communicate well and do all these sort of things, you're not going to last long, I don't think, unless you're incredibly talented. There are so many skills that tie over and will help you in your future life. Yeah.
So when the decision came to go to jumps, how easy was it, and what route did you take to that?
So I had a few rides for Rick. Probably actually regret not staying there longer, but I was keen to get on and ended up moving down towards near Banbury. Started with Milton Harris, and again he was very good. He gave me a lot of opportunities, you know. But like I would always like to think bloody hard, you know. As in I was never shy of hard work, and again the harder you work, it becomes tougher for people not to give you opportunities. So I built up from there. He gave me a lot of winners, and then, you know, sort of started building a relationship with Richard Lee like that, and things went from there.
Yeah, and through those years and the hard work, I think when you announced your retirement, a lot of people who spoke about you said that was the thing about you, is that you didn't mind hard work, you didn't mind what it entailed to ride a horse for anybody, whether it was or whatever. And did you find that those people, the one thing that you enjoyed was loyalty from them?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think the relationships I built have lasted throughout my career, which is it probably is unusual within racing. Switch back and forth, but the majority, the main people that I've ridden for throughout my career, and I think that's testament to those guys as much as me, you know. And I always enjoyed being in the yard, like building relationships with horses at home, school, difficult horses, trying to make a difference, and that was something that I really got a kick out of.
Let's talk about some of your highlights in the saddle. Now, one horse that you rode, one of my favourites over the last few years, was Thomas Crapper. I always felt that there was a Cheltenham Festival win in him. There were a couple of times well handicapped, didn't quite work out for him. But what was he like to ride, and how good was he?
He was a very good handicapper on his day, you know. As in, he was always great fun to ride because you had to drop him in. That he used to be quite keen in his early days, and if I had one, you know, not having a Cheltenham Festival when it was it, and the day he finished second, the novice handicap chase was galling, you know, as in, because I think we jumped the last sort of third on our side, and I just got the front, and whoosh, Irish Cavalier came flying up the outside and won comfortable, and I was absolutely gutted. But
he did give you a fabulous day at Newbury in 2017.
Yeah. I mean, and like I won him twice around Cheltenham and stuff like that. As in, we had a lot of great days together, and yeah, he was a special horse to me.
He was the type of horse that when I watching you through the race, I was never completely convinced how well he was going, because you'd squeeze for a stride or two, and I think, oh, he's in trouble a long way out, and then he'd be back on the bridle again.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was a right character. I mean, I remember in his early, there was one day when it was snowing at the yard, and he just refused to move. You know, as in he had his own mind for sure. Yeah, I don't like the snow much either, but he very much had his own mind, and you had to humour him, and there were days when he was on song and he was very through periods where it wouldn't really happen for him at all, and then from nowhere he'd just come back alive in a race for no apparent reason. I mean, Newbury that day in the Great World Gold Cup was a bit like that. He hadn't been going particularly well for a while, and then all of a sudden, I mean, he absolutely slooshed up that day, didn't jump in the ditch, and it was a special day for everyone.
Another special day for you came at Warwick, courtesy of a grey or white horse in Rousse Blanc in the Classic Chase. Talk us through your particular occasion.
It's funny because Mark Jackson, who owned them, was become a great friend of mine as well, and he was a right character as he's a real character too. And I remember early on in his career, I actually said, "Oh, I think if there's one big race this horse could win, it could." I just thought it just would suit him down to the ground, loads of jumping, proper tested jumping, often a real slog. And that day, everything went perfect. I got a great start. He jumped from fence to fence, and to be honest, everything was going very, very. The second last down the back, I was on a tiny little saddle, and he half jinked at something. The saddle nearly went round, and that was a pretty dicey moment. And luckily, it hadn't gone quite far enough that I was able to shift my weight and get it back together. Coming to the last, King's horse looked like he was nearly going better, but the horse just produced an absolutely brilliant jump again when I needed him, and then stayed dourly all the way to the line. And he was a real dour stayer. You know, he's in here. There wouldn't be a race far enough tough, and I like that a lot.
Mark Jackson obviously used to work Channel 4 back in the day. Yeah, so some great memories of watching this horse win. Kerry Lee, obviously, Le Beaubai, Welsh national. Must have been one that really meant a lot to you.
For me, it was probably the best day. You know, as in, I think I was 27 or 28 at the time, and I'd ridden quite a lot of winners and been going for a long time. But when it's all over, the one thing you the wall of a big winner, you know, and so I hadn't had one up to then. And again, he was just a real tough staying, you know, horse. And again, that day, everything went perfect. I followed Giles Cross the whole way around. Early in the straight, I thought he looked for a minute like he was going to go clear and win nicely, and then all of a sudden the horse's bottomless stamina kicked in, and he won very impressively. And I remember pulling up, and it almost didn't kind of dawn on me initially, and then I went absolutely nuts because it was like I say, the big days are the ones that really give you the biggest kick. And then my mates Tinks and Messi came flying out, and they were hugging me, and yeah, that was brilliant. Yeah.
Can you imagine what it would have been like not to have got that one?
I can imagine, yeah, and it'd be pretty hard, to be honest, because like I say, you can ride 10,000 winners or whatever, but what people ask you is, oh, have you won any big races? And like I say, the Welsh national, yeah, it's a special. And like I said, throughout my career, I was often associated with chasers and stay-in chasers, and they seem to suit me ideally. I always loved riding over fences far more probably than over hurdles, and that horse was a special little horse, and to win a big one.
So when you started off in racing, you started your career as a jump jockey. Do you feel you've achieved as much as you wanted to? Do you feel you've achieved as much as you could do?
I think I gave myself every chance. Like I said, being honest, as in it probably wasn't quite the career I hoped. You know, you come in as a youngster and you want to be champion jockey. You know, you want to ride 1,000 winners, and they're your dreams and aspirations. Like they're again what fuel. You have childhood dreams, and so did I accomplish quite what I would have hoped to? No, probably not. But as you get older and you can reflect more, I had a great career and great fun. And compared to Plenty, I did a lot better than Plenty. So I'm not down at all, but I've always been honest. And for me, no, it probably wasn't quite as much as I hoped it would be.
But you're obviously honest. You're also obviously hardworking, and you just get on with the job, which is what everyone says about you as much as you've said yourself. But what happens to the job? They have that realisation when it dawns on them, I'm not going to be a champion jockey. I'm not the next AP McCoy. I'm not the next Frankie Dettori. And it is going to be a job, but I'm stuck in it now. Is that where we get some support with people struggling to cope?
Yeah, no doubt. As in, what we are entering though is a time where I think there is way more support for jockeys, you know, as in the jockey support network, I think is nearly one of the best in professional sport. Recent times has become a lot more realisation about the mental health issues that go with it all. And there is no doubt when you're grinding away day in, day out and things aren't happening, you're getting jocked off horses, sometimes you're not even getting spoke to that grade and whatever else. Of course, it can be very tough. And like I say, with the PJA now employing sports psychologists and all this sort of thing, there's a lot more help out there. And I think as well, there's not the stigma to it anymore. You know, people are far more able to come out and say, do you know what, I need help. Whereas before there was this sort of macho image that whatever happens, just get on with it.
It's a tough thing to do, both to realise that you're struggling and then to ask for help. But the more you can do it, obviously, the more people that can. But tell me about some of the people that you enjoyed the journey with, the people that you feel during your time really made a positive impact on you.
You know, like throughout, I mean, he's a special man, you know, isn't he? A lovely, nice person in the world of racing, where there are plenty of, you know, people that are quite tough and all this sort of stuff. You know, Robin wears his heart on his sleeve. I actually can't ever remember us having a crossword, you know. I think he trusted me to get on and ride them, and I knew the horses would jump well and be well prepared, and we just clicked in that way, you know. As in Matt Shepherd's another one that I had some great, the most underrated trainers in the country, and what he did with Ikaduru Road to get him to win those big prizes was a phenomenal effort training, because he wasn't an easy horse. And again, Richard Lee, you know, he was one of those. He was quite prickly at times, you know, but he might say a few things to you, but within seconds it'd be forgotten. And again, I always like that, you know. I don't mind people saying to me, well, I think you got it wrong there, but we were soon able to forget about it and move on. And then the other people are ones that become lifelong best friends, you know. Within the weighing room, Andrew Tinkler, Tom Messenger, they were guys that we met at the same time starting out, and we will be lifelong friends forever, you know. With me the other day, and like I say, we'll grow old together, and that they're the special things.
Yeah, Robin Dickon in particular, you know, any dealings I've ever had with him, he's always so pleasant.
Yeah,
he did give me a telling off once about where in the paddock. He said, "Never again, please." But he said it in such a pleasant way, in such a nice manner, that it was like being told off by the teacher that you like at school, as opposed to being told off by the one who you know is going to get the cane out and smack you. So,
for sure,
I mean,
it's again, that's a cliche that I hate, but he's almost too nice to be a trainer and within the job, you know, because he genuinely cared about every horse, you know, as in, and they were like his children, and he just wore his heart on the sleeve, and when things went wrong, he'd be in tears and all that, and when things went right, he'd be in tears too. You know, he's a really emotional guy that just loves racing.
Yeah, I can't not mention who was another horse that you and Robin, you know, enjoyed some fantastic times with.
Yeah, I mean, look, he was obviously Henry Oliver's ride for a lot early on, and then I probably didn't get on until sort of later in his career. But we won a listed handicap chase at Ascot and for 2 or whatever, you know, and a short head. And for me personally, because he'd been such a great horse for Robin, but he hadn't been my ride, again, I was elated to get on him at the end of his career and win a big one. And to be fair, Richard Whitehead was very good to me, because when I first fell off him a couple of times, nearly got brought down one day at Newbury, and then went to Cheltenham, and I probably got it wrong. I squeezed him in. It wasn't a put down and fired me out the saddle. So it would have been very easy for an owner, especially in the modern times, to say, do you know what? You've had 2 goes now and you have a change. And he didn't. He stuck by me, and we won at Newbury, and then we went and won at Ascot, and I felt like I repaid him, you know.
Yeah. So what does the future hold for Charlie Post? You've had a little dip into the media side of things.
Look, I'd love to do more media work, you know. I'm passionate about the sport, pretty opinionated, as a lot of my friends would tell you, and yeah, if there was a role within that, I would love to do that. About to qualify as a jockey coach. I think we've got our assessment day in a couple of weeks, and again, I've done plenty of young kids at Ollie's and stuff like that, and I'd love to give a bit more back by doing that. And of course the yard, you know, as in we've built up a really great business that I'm very proud of, you know.
And you've got some good material to use for advertising, because Thomas Darby, is that right?
In for Ollie, you know, as in, and again, the way I look at the yard, we're like an academy, you know, as in like in professional football, and we got all these incredibly exciting, unbroken, untouched raw material, and like someone like Thomas Darby, he'd started cantering away, like you just knew like he had it. Like it's like when as a kid you go down the park and you see a youngster kicking a football or throwing a rugby ball or bowling a cricket ball, and some of them just have instant athletic ability that you Thomas Darby was definitely one of those, and to see him go and be placed at Cheltenham in the Supreme Novice, knowing that we'd given him his sort of first step on the road was a really proud moment, and also trained by one of my great mates too, and I can't wait to see him along with plenty of them. Yeah.
Well, Charlie, it's been fascinating chatting to you. You are going to stick around for the rest of the show, so we'll be putting your media skills to the test over the next couple of hours. We've also got other guests joining us in just a minute, so thank you. As I said, fascinating, and we'll be chatting to Charlie a little bit later on. But for now, we are heading back to Newmarket once again, and to Tom.
Back here at Palace House, yard manager Sue Malloy has gone to get off the walk. Big Orange for us. Here he is making his way towards us. Hi, Sue.
Hi.
How is he? How are you?
He's very well. I'm very well, thank you.
He looks very happy and very relaxed.
Yeah.
In you go. He is a big boy, isn't he? Big
He
Orange.
is big.
And so, Sue, just tell us how long he's been here, Big Orange.
He's been here 3 months, which is his holidaying time. So he's been a very, very successful horse here. We've had people literally from all around the country coming especially to see him.
But they so often with these stayers, they fight their way into our hearts, and that fantastic, hello you, that fantastic Ascot Gold Cup win, I think really cemented him in our hearts as one of our favourite stayers, and people must have flocked round to come and see him.
Yes, they have, yeah. We've literally people all around the country, from Scotland and everywhere. Sorry, he thinks he wants his breakfast.
Now, how easy is it going to be for you to keep him there? If you want to pop and shut him in, you're very welcome to. Is he quite relaxed in his box?
He is actually, yes. Yeah? No, he is. For walker, and he knows his breakfast, so that's all. No, he's a very easygoing horse, actually. Considering his size, he's actually very good.
I mean, he is a big lad, isn't
he? He is, especially for a flat race horse. So he dispels a myth for the visitors straight away as well. They think race horses are small and all the jumps horses are big. So there you go. Not necessarily.
When he retired, it's a sad day for everyone and everyone involved, of course, because we want to see them race on. But what a great life he still goes on to have, of course, and he can come and people can come and see him. It must mean a huge amount to them to just come and see him in the flesh.
Yeah, which is exactly what we're here at the Heritage Centre for. Because obviously you can't just walk onto a trainer's yard whilst they're actually in training and say you want to come and pet the horse and give him a carrot sort of thing. But that's exactly what you can do here. It's great to have the big names here for people to do exactly that.
Now it's his last day here, but tell us what his routine since he came here will have been like, sort of day to day.
So he basically he goes on the walker first thing in the morning to get his bit of exercise. He'll
which he's quite excited
which he's
to do
quite
now.
excited to want to have, and then he'll get turned out in the paddocks later on then, and he spends about 3 to 4 hours out in the paddocks. He's actually really happy out there, and that's what he'll go do when he goes back to the Stechford Park stud. He'll go back and be turned out. Mate, what are you doing? Come here.
He's thinking it is breakfast time.
Yes.
Just who else have we got? You've got Gold Dream here,
Gold
King's Stand
Dreams,
winner here.
Yep, he's on holiday. Originally trained by Robert Racing School, so that's another job that they can do when they retire. So that's great. We've got Starluck back again for his 3rd visit.
I had the pleasure, stay there, mister. I had the pleasure of seeing Starluck here a year ago.
You did,
I got
yes.
to do some lunging with him, and I didn't. Well, I think he enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but he was an absolute gentleman.
Yeah, no, he's
a
lovely.
real favourite here, isn't he?
Yeah. So he's back for his 3rd visit. And then we've actually got a couple of mares, and we don't get many mares, but we've got one who was a brood mare and is now going to be a riding horse. That's only 4 years old, who will go on to be a really nice riding horse, just didn't make it in racing, which is one of the biggest stories. So they're the ones that really need the homes and need the retraining.
So I'm gonna let you relax.
We'll let him.
For the morning.
Yeah,
done,
it is actually just trying to hold him still. Yeah.
Absolutely. Sue, thank you very much. Big
No
Orange,
problem.
enjoy your breakfast. It's
Yeah.
lovely to see you, sir. That's it from Sue and Big Orange.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sue.
And it's actually not in there yet, but don't tell him.
He's thinking, there's no breakfast.
So hang on a minute, this can't be right.
Luck on Sunday, proudly sponsored by Albasti. Bye.
The Racing TV website has all the exclusive racing content you love from our channel and so much more. RacingTV.com is a true one-stop shop for all racing fans, featuring the latest race cards, videos, all on one easy-to-use site. You'll never miss a race on RacingTV.com. Watch the main channel or create your own viewing experience by watching up to 4 of our dedicated live racecourse feeds at once on Racing TV Extra. The action live, our race replays will be online within minutes of the finish. We know how important race cards are. That's why we've teamed up with Timeform to offer in-depth and easy-to-digest cards with Timeform ratings and odds comparison powered by our fast results service from courses around the world will keep you up to date with all the latest racing results. If you rate a horse you've seen, you can add it to the industry-leading Racing TV tracker. Then you'll be notified the next time it's entered for a race and due to never need to miss the price again. And there's more. RacingTV.com provides a daily tipping service from our betting experts, which are certainly worth looking out for. You can even apply for your next club day via RacingTV.com. Simply head select the club day you'd like to attend, and you'll be on course before you know it. With these features and so much more, the Racing TV website is your ultimate online hub for horse racing. Start making the most of your membership now at Racing TV. Desktop, mobile or tablet.
Luck on Sunday, proudly sponsored by Albasti Equiworld Dubai.
Welcome back to Luck on Sunday. We have further strengthened the quality of squad, as they call it, kids call it these days, in the studio. Eve Johnson-Horton is here and Dave Ord from the Sporting Life. Eve, I'll come to you first. It was a very busy day for you. Most importantly, you got your stable star back on the racecourse and out of the starting stalls, accidental agent.
Yeah, that was a great relief, obviously. It was that the main aim was we knew that Brown Mile wouldn't suit him particularly, but we needed to go to a different start and just get him out and get him to jump. So thrilled with that.
And how is he today?
Oh, he's fine. Very pleased with himself. He thinks he's very clever.
Dave, now, I understand yesterday you decided that because there's so much going on, you thought it was best to have a hub to observe everything.
I was watching the BBC coverage of Wimbledon, Rishi, and I thought, how can I walk away now to go to York? I can't. He's hooked me. No,
it's a very good point.
There was so much going on, wasn't there? To try to keep on RTV covering most of the coverage was almost impossible. It was a wonderful day, a very busy day, and lots of stories have come out of it. Lots of stories have come out of it, and we will be talking about those in just a moment. One more thing before we get into a bit of a talking point, just to ask you about Eve, who continues the fabulous run. This is 4 out of 4.
4 out of 4, yeah.
This year. I mean, did you expect that? I mean, it's quite an impressive win, actually, ultimately, going up in the handicap as she has done.
She's an extraordinary filly. I mean, she looks like a giraffe, not a giraffe, but there's nothing of her. She's very slight. She's actually starting to put on weight and look almost like a racehorse now. But when she came into me last year, I said to her, only Bruce, I can't train this at the moment. So I sent her off to Hens for 2 months because I said she's too weak. And then we ran her at Epsom. She got beaten in the nose last year, and I thought, oh, she's a little bit better than I thought she was. Yeah. And she's just done nothing but improve. She never works well at home. She works with what you put her with. You put her with a donkey, she'll work with a donkey. Works to that. I mean, that's all she does. And then she's extraordinary in her races. Every time I think, oh, well, not today. She goes behind the bridle, and then suddenly she goes, coming through, out the way. And off she goes. And she is just a wonderful filly.
And so, therefore, the way she carries herself at home, races, well, now you will be different because you have expectations, I'm guessing. But in the early part of a career, you didn't have that expectation when you started this sequence?
Absolutely not. I mean, I said to John and Heather when we went to Lingfield for the main, I went, it's very difficult to win a maiden at Ireland too. It's you won't win, but if she runs a nice race, don't worry. We'll get a nice handicap mark. So I was like sort of gobsmacked when she won that, and then she's just continued and continued. She's a joy to train. She really is.
Where will she go next? Because she's getting to that point now where she's going to.
There's a 1:05 race at Newbury for fillies on Friday, but that's in case the handicapper has a sort of hairy mare and puts her up too much. I don't like running her too often because there's not much of her, but I think we'll be aiming for black type. Yeah.
Bella Vita, 4 out of 4 this year for Eve Johnson-Horton. Now, one of the big talking points over the last week or so, in the wake of Charlie Fellows' excellent article in the Racing Post, has been the whip. We've got 3 great minds on the show today, so we thought we'd chat. Charlie has advocated the potential of disqualifying a horse if a rider breaks the rules and exceeds the use of the whip that is permitted. Charlie, I'm going to come to you first, because one of the things that a lot of people, for example, Hayley Turner has mentioned on ITV, that she wasn't counting, she wasn't able to count, heated the battle. It's something that all jockeys have spoken about. What are your thoughts on if you exceed the number of strikes permitted? If you do that, the horse, or other infringements, the horse gets disqualified?
I think it's inevitable it's going to come in, as in the only thing I would slightly concern me is the number going to have to change then? Is it, is 7 too many to keep count of in theory? Do you make it a lesser amount and say, look, it's 4 or 5, everyone can sort of hopefully keep within that? And there's no doubt that for the first week or so it might be a big problem. There might be horses getting this. The only thing I would also worry is it could be quite unsavoury if someone goes over and it's like, well, hang on a sec, we're going to go in the steward's room and get the abacus out now, and has someone gone over and then they're disqualified. I don't know how well to the wider world it will look, as in when you have horses, them being disqualified because of it. But I think it's an inevitable in this day and age that there's probably something like that is going to have to happen.
You say that, but there are people willing to defend the current position. Certainly with regards to bookmakers, for example, Dave, they're saying if this happened with the way people bet, especially on a busy day like yesterday.
It would, if you imagine from a punter's perspective, if you're at back thank speed, it was thrown out because Hayley had used the whip 9 times rather than 7. The second's promoted. I mean, there's lots of goodwill gesture now. Will gesture, Frankie Dettori was thrown out. His 4th win of the afternoon at Ascot was beaten, got on by a short head, he used a whip 9 times, got disqualified. I don't think they're clamouring to give you a refund there on that one. It's also a perception, and I do agree something is going to happen because it's not going to go away, the whip issue. As much as there are going to be external pressures take place. But could you imagine the PR if the Gold Cup winner is disqualified or the Grand National winner is disqualified for excessive use of the whip, if that's what's going to come in? The news headlines will be all about the whip, not the Grand National winner, not the... At the moment, we're not quite... We're in this position whereby there's going to be pressure put upon the sport future. It's for 2 things, the encouragement to the go forward or it's a corrective. I think it will stay. Jockey will be able to use it as a corrective issue. They've got to do. Through safety, I mean, I'm not a horseman, quite clearly, Mother Nature saw to that, but require them. Charlie will know an awful lot more than me as a safety mechanism. Whether we're going to be able to use them in years to come to urge horses to go forward, I wouldn't be so sure.
Gay Kellaway would still be the only woman to have ridden a winner at Ascot if those rules were in place. Eve, what are your thoughts on how we rectify the going issue?
I think to say that jockeys can't count to 7 is ridiculous. Of course they can count to 7. I think that... yes, there should be some leeway to disqualify. If it is so far over, it's horrendous. 1 or 2 over, then yes, give them a bigger disqualification and a bigger ban, and it should relate to the size of the race as well. If it's a Group 1, then yeah, you get a bigger ban, a bigger fine. Say you're 11 or 12 and it looks, I mean, it's all about perception, isn't it? It's all about perception. If it looks to the public like you are thrashing that horse, then of course you must disqualify them. But I think if you're 1 or 2 over, I mean, there's got to be, speed, you don't automatically get your licence taken away. You get 3 points. So, and it's the same with the days, with the jockeys. So there's got to be also leeway. There's got to be, bans within it. And basically, jockeys have to be re-educated. They're very rare. I mean, I have an apprentice, and she keeps getting a couple of days. And I've told her that if she gets any more 2 days, I'm going to ban her myself.
Right.
Because you can't carry on doing this. We have to, because otherwise it will be policed for us.
The subject of public perception is an interesting one because it keeps coming up, and it's obviously a problem that the BHA feel that they have to deal with, and you can understand that. But when we make a decision in the heat of the moment, especially say after a race at Royal Ascot, who is making that decision? It's not based on a public perception. Isn't that decision going to be based on racing professionals? Because there are times where a racing professional looks at a result of a race in the immediate aftermath. It's not terrible what's happened, but somebody with a public perception who isn't completely au fait with racing, is not a regular racegoer, they might think that what we think is okay and acceptable is unacceptable. So it's quite who's and what's the public perception?
Well, you just have to have a line, don't you? And that's what and someone has to make the call, and someone has to make the line.
But that's where it probably has to be, that if you go over a certain amount, you're disqualified. But you then say, well, we're going to go back to a panel now who are again going to review the race. Does it look unsavoury? Are you too many over? Are you this? Are you that? And I'm completely in agreement with you. I don't think it probably needs to be as draconian as what we're talking. But go down that line, it has to be, if you go over, you're disqualified. Because I just don't see... Because then you'll get a race where someone's gone over, but the panel's decided that it's not that unsavoury, so they keep the race, and then someone from outside our control will be like, no. And I don't know where you draw the line.
So do you think we have two numbers? There's a number that triggers a ban for the rider, and then a number above that that triggers a disqualification.
Yeah, that's
for
what
the
I
horse.
think. That's what I think. That's what I was trying to go across.
Yeah, and
obviously very badly. But yeah, I think so.
It is inevitable that in the coming period in racing, say the next 12 months, it is possible we may have disqualifications for excessive use of the whip.
I think, but if you have one or two, you won't have any more.
That's the other argument that's coming up
that
a
is
lot
the
at the
argument,
moment.
isn't it?
And the only way that we're going to find that out is by introducing it.
And probably when you're saying about jockeys can all count, well, I do agree. And if they just won't go near 7, will they?
No, they'll just stop at 4. At 4, and then you've got an extra couple in the bag if you need them.
Yeah, so...
You know.
And you think that the way things stand, jockeys should be able to do that, even though some have said, it's the heat of the moment, can't...
Yeah, but if you're coming into beat for the flat, but if you're coming into the final furlong and you've just given them a couple of backhanders just to get them going, well, you know that's 2, you can work that one out. Then maybe in the final furlong you give them another 2, well that's 4. And then, so it gets a bit, you've still got 2 or 3 in the bag. Maybe you might go 1 over, but you shouldn't be going 4 over.
What about over jumps, Charlie?
The only difficulty I'd have is say you're riding a 3 1/4 mile chase on heavy ground and they're sloppy early and you gave them a smack just to kind of say, come on now, liven yourself up. So you've only got 7 in theory left, and then 2 miles later and that's where the counting becomes an issue.
Of course, I agree
I'll be
with
honest,
that,
if you more fences and done everything in the race, and to then subconsciously be like, I must remember now, there's only 7 because one's already gone.
They can say if you give them a couple in the country, they don't count towards your whatever it is.
But I think what we're all showing though, it actually is a discussion and not just be like, that's what we're going to do and that's the end of it, because it is something that needs debating far more.
Well, we spoke about one of the horses you rode, Thomas Crapper, who would come off the bridle, you'd come alive again, and then they idle. So it is.
Of course, it's difficult, and no one's going to agree.
But I do agree.
Plus a change in the world of racing.
Exactly.
I do agree with you completely. It is for the jockeys to make sure this is going to work. You know, especially on the big occasions. Like it can't just be an excuse to it was the Hunt Cup or whatever was on the line. So you know that's why I forgot. And because it is the big days that the public people that don't like it are watching far more.
Yeah.
And by nature, it is the big days that cause the problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as Eve said, shouldn't the ban, if you're banned on a Group 1 day, be you don't ride in the next 9 group days when there's Group 1 racing, rather than you miss Yarmouth, and no disrespect, Ripon the next week, you're missing Glorious Goodwood, for example, if you infringe at Royal Ascot. You're going to be hit hard on the days when you want to be riding most.
Well, I was going to say, if we had stiffer penalties now without disqualification, would that make any difference?
Well, Hayley said it would, didn't she? She said.
She did, yeah.
She said, "Yeah, I've got a mortgage to pay. If I knew that I was going to have 3-month ban, I wouldn't do it." So if she could count when she was going to have a 3-month ban, I'm not quite sure why she couldn't count when she didn't really. But I really do think it is up to the jockeys. The jockeys have got to just grab hold of it and say, "That's it."
Okay. So we are still at square one.
Yeah.
No, but it is something that clearly has to be addressed, because it is on and on, and people are still unhappy with the position at the moment. So enjoyed that chat. Wish we could do more of it, but we have to reflect as well on some of the excellent racing that we had at Newmarket last week, and obviously yesterday was the highlight of it. And Dave, 10 Sovereigns somehow, after his run at Ascot, has produced this yesterday. What was the uptake from what Aidan O'Brien said and Ryan Moore said afterwards?
It was actually fast. I think the betting market told you the story. This horse was so strong through the morning, and this was the 10 Sovereigns we expected to see. We were excited about the sprint division this season because of 10 Sovereigns and Calyx coming through to challenge the established stars, and Blue Point shone bright at Royal Ascot's exited stage left. 10 Sovereigns Wealth Cup, but here on fast ground, on a more forceful ride, allowed him to get on bowl along. And it was the makings of the horse, wasn't it? Aidan afterwards was saying that he was 2.5 seconds quicker than the other sprinters they've had at Ballydoyle on there. I mean, we want sectional timings for the race. Gallops, please. I mean, he said 4 sub-11-second furlongs the horse had produced in his final series piece of work. And the fact that the betting market was so strong suggests that some people had got a hold of that data somewhere along that. Look, he was brilliant here. So we can question how strong a July Cup was it. The 6th horse was Lim's Crusader, the Singapore Raider. The established sprinting stars were further back. It might not have been the strongest July Cup we've seen, but it was an authoritative performance when we needed one. And who's laid down a marker, and fingers crossed he goes on from here. I mean, that's cool, more sponsored than none, thought Rishi. Why wouldn't you give 5 furlongs a go at York? You wait for Haydock in the Sprint Cup, there's a chance of soft ground there. I mean, quick 5 at kick and go.
To York, wouldn't they? I mean, it's going to be quick ground at York.
It's quite easy, 5 at York. It's quite an that's a very stiff, that's a stiff 6.
Yeah.
That's an easy 5. You're going completely different directions. Ryan got the fractions absolutely spot on there, because was definitely in front at halfway.
Yeah.
And, you know, how many times have we seen a Ballydoyle horse do that? That's been disappointing in the spring. They've tried to make it into a miler. It's very difficult. You're trying to make them into a miler, and then you're going, by the way, you're sprinting now. Back to sprinting. He was like, what? I've been waiting. Why are you suddenly making me go faster? And that's got him back into the mood of sprinting. And that was a very, very impressive performance there.
Okay, we're actually going to hear from the winning rider. First of all, here's Ryan Moore.
Very impressive. He was still a little bit babyish, but he was sharper than he was at Ascot. When I asked him, he quickened very well. I thought he was very impressive today, and there was no doubt about he just looked like a top-class sprinter, and hopefully he'll continue that for the rest of the year now.
How do you account for the difference compared with Ascot, for example?
Well, I think, you know, we started him in a Guineas and we were trying to get him to stay, and it was a little flat at Ascot, but and it was also a little bit, the ground was still a little bit slow, you know. He needs a real stable surface. Ground probably was an issue, but probably a combination of the two at Ascot, you know. And you know, he gets the trip very well, but I thought the turn of foot he showed was the most impressive thing today.
Could he drop back to 5?
It could be an option, I suppose, but you know, I don't know what the plan plans are at the moment, you know.
He came out of Ascot very well. We stretched him in the Guineas, probably beyond his trip, obviously. For a horse that was a sprinter to run the race in the Guineas that he ran, he was still there with a half a furlong to go and not beaten very far. For 2 or 3 weeks after the Guineas, he was a little bit quiet and a little bit tired mentally and physically, so it took him a little bit of time to come back. So we just had time enough to train him for Ascot again, and obviously he went to Ascot and ran a great race. We were delighted with him, but he still was, because we had to mind him so much, so it was all going to depend on how he came out of Ascot. He came out of Ascot great, and he really blossomed from Ascot to here. And I think his last piece of work, I remember looking at the thing, there was 12 seconds, and then there was 4:11 seconds in a row in his work, like for 4 furlongs. So for a horse, when you see a horse doing that kind of times, like, they had to be quick, and he had to be back on song. Seamus rides him in all his work, Stephen rides him out every day, Andrew's in charge of him, all over the moon with him. So we were really looking forward to him here. Ryan gave him a great ride. He rode him very confident. He rode him like he felt he was the best horse in the race, and he felt that there was no doubt about the trip. And he didn't mind which side he out and come a straight line. So no, delighted for everyone really, Lydia.
And did the ride remind you, or the performance remind you of Mozart and Stravinsky?
Yeah, listen, I was probably even more impressed with this horse today. Like, he went all the way today, and Ryan caught a hold of it too, and he took off, didn't he? You know, so like Mozart went all the way, I think, up the stand side, and ground out the finish, galloped to the line. But this fella went, and what I loved about this horse today, when Ryan caught hold of him, he quickened. You know, after going all the way, like he left the gates very fast, very quick, and he was like one of those good athletes. He was able to go along in cruise control very easy. You know, he was going along at a good pace, but he looked like he was going easy. So, listen, he was finding it effort. He's a beautiful mind. He's a beautiful big horse. Great hind part, great front to him. You know, so not delighted, Lydia, really.
A perfect 10 for 10 Sovereigns yesterday. Aidan O'Brien with Circus Maximus brought him back from the Derby distance mile.
Who saw that coming? I mean, I thought it needed further.
Well,
so I mean, it just shows what needed.
People were talking about with the possible Ledger horse, and he's obviously brought 10 Sovereigns back from a mile to 6 furlongs. The difficulty of that, Eve, he was saying, you know, their minds are still, or they've been trained for to slow down to get the distances. How difficult is it to do in the space of time that he did it, both with Circus Maximus from a mile and a half to a mile, and with 10 Sovereigns from a mile?
It's very difficult, but the hardest thing for a trainer, I think, is getting the trip right. That's what the hardest thing I find is. Some horses, it's very obvious what the trip is, and some of them are just like, I have no idea. I'm scratching around what I'm doing here. Yeah. I think it's, you know, the ones with a good mind, it's easier to do, obviously. The ones who are, you know, slightly interesting characters won't be as easy.
So, Charlie, we've kind of just teased it. Do you think if he goes back, Eve says, Unthorpe, easy 5, different from a stiff 6. Would you think Aidan O'Brien will do it with?
I completely agree with what he's saying, but I think he'll do it. As in, I think it's inevitable that it's the next step. I mean, if the horse sharpens up again and they can ride him as aggressively, I don't see why they wouldn't. And what is special is the way that they do campaign these horses aggressively. They're not frightened to get it wrong. They're not frightened to try something new. And that is why time and again Aidan O'Brien's a genius, in my opinion.
I mean, go back to before Aidan O'Brien. We're talking about Circus Maximus and 10 Sovereigns. Sir Michael Stout did take Adgedale back from the Derby to win the July Cup. So yeah, steady on there.
The best printer I ever saw was Desjeux. The free handicap on the season off about 89 or 90. I mean,
it really is. Yeah. The trip is, once you can get the trip sorted, it's just so much easier.
Yeah. So with regards to that, you'd imagine that you mentioned they sponsor the
It's a shot to nothing, isn't it? Because 6 furlong wins now. You've got a 5 furlong Group 1. Favourite's Batash, who twice has bombed out at the race and doesn't like York. You then Mabs Cross, Soldier's Call, and a couple of the 2-year-olds. It's not like he's going into a stellar renewal of the Coolmore Nunthorpe. It looks perfectly winnable on paper.
What price would he be?
Well, it's 5 to 1 at the minute. It's 5 to 2 Batash, 5 to 1 10 sovereigns. If they announce now that they're pointing to the Kuma, those prices would flip, and I think he could go off very short on the day if he does turn up.
Yeah, well, it was very impressive what they did. He could dazzle in what Dave is suggesting might not be vintage, older crop of sprinters. Now, we'll look back at the Bunbury Cup from yesterday, which was won, like a lot of races over the last few weeks, by Mark Johnston, doing the job on this occasion. Just amazing, the Mark Johnston bandwagon. I mean, every year, yes, but it's particularly the last few weeks.
He's extraordinary. I follow his Twitter feed, and you just keep getting a little banner up, going up, going 149 winners. Oh, look, 5 minutes later, 150 winners. I'm like, all right.
He needs to we need to find out who does that update, because they have a very busy job.
Yes.
Probably one of the busiest jobs in the yard. But this was a very impressive performance and a gutsy performance, and old cliche that comes out time and time again, but it's a sort of typical Mark Johnston performance, Charlie.
Very much so. As in, I was just going to say, what is it that he does that makes them like that? Because they just never. They go out and they just keep winding it up, sticking their neck out, and like you said, it's year on year. As in, I'd love to know what it is specifically that kind of almost trains that toughness into them.
Wouldn't we all?
do you know what I mean? It's in like uncanny the way they do it. They just never seem to know when they're beat.
I think he loves his horses to be in a rhythm, which, you know, it's quite, and he has the same jockeys all the time.
Yeah.
They know the horses, they know Mark, they know how they like to be ridden, and they just get rhythm and getting on and doing it. And I think that is very important. That's a big clue to it.
The horses can take their racing, Dave. A lot of these horses, you know, you see them racing numerous times through the season.
It's not just the racing, the travelling. I mean, they go every...
I mean, Massam Star goes racing more often than you, doesn't he, Rishi? You look up on a Saturday, if he's not there, you wouldn't.
I don't think there's a stable for him at home. I think he just sits in the horse box and just goes wherever.
I know Matt makes a point that the racing strengthens the horses and their bone density, and he plays down their role, but the long their seasons are utterly remarkable.
And they look fantastic as well.
They always look amazing.
Massam Star is probably one of the best looking horses around.
Wonderful horse.
And races every day.
Yeah.
But it does remind the rest of us that actually horses are for racing. As you feed them, I think feeding is very important. You know, as long as you feed them right, you can work them hard and race them. And it's better to race them than keep galloning them at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that with your staff? No. but the Mark Johnston over the years has been exactly that. It has been, let's get them out, let's get them racing, they can stand it, and what happens if they go through a dip? You don't put them away and just completely forget that, you know, that you can run again.
Yeah. But they'll get dropped in the handicap. And then you can start again, because they inevitably get to a point where actually the handicap has got hold of them. And then if you keep on running them, they'll eventually come down, and then they can start again.
Frank Dettori's formed a strong bond with him over the last few weeks, Charlie, and another big race success for a man role.
It's absolutely phenomenal, you know, as in he just seems to be riding. I mean, he's always been an incredible rider, but for me, he seems to be riding better than ever at the moment, as in he's in that sort of groove where you think he that shouldn't win at the moment.
He's got more air miles than most of us, the amount of flying dismounts he's done this year.
One for the Bunbury Cup was interesting, wasn't it? He obviously fancied a bit of exercise. I mean, it was another typical Frankie ride, wasn't it? Just absolutely no chance rolling. I know he's got on the right horse with the right attitude and running style, but he's done it. I mean, he's headed 2 out, there's no panic, hit the rising ground, he said the horse went on again, and then I've got to decide between the International at Ascot and the Golden Mile at Goodwood for him. It's lovely to have options like that. You wouldn't be surprised if it ran somewhere.
Quite possible.
Probably do both.
Yeah, absolutely.
You say that. I mean,
I'm not joking. They probably
we
will.
might be speaking to Mark later on, so hopefully he can clarify that, and that might well be the point. The plan for his winner of the Bunbury Cup, Vale of Kent. Big race at York yesterday was and this provided a great success for young Rob Hornby, who has been part of the Andrew Balding team now for a long time, with a horse who ran very disappointingly at Royal Ascot.
He did, didn't he? But they interviewed Annalisa on ITV, and she pointed to the fact he'd won so well at the EBA meeting here. And York is a course like that horses do tend to come back and run really well at. And I thought this was a lovely ride. It was a John Smith's Cup in which they've gone hard early, then tried to slow them up, and often they don't come back to you at York.
Yeah.
And he got too far back. He's in the right place all the way. The horse has travelled so kindly through it, quickened up, put the race to bed, then had enough in reserve to hold off the runner. I mean, he was a major gamble. It was a day of big punts around the country. There's a couple in here. But it was John Smith's Cup. I mean, it's a remarkable race and a remarkable point. Was it the 60th year of sponsorship? It's an incredible backing from John Smith and it's always one of the big betting races of the year. And I mean, I made a case earlier in the week for 4 on Sporting Life, and none of them hit the frame. We'd be staggered to know the winner, and his win in August put him bang there. But I was disappointed with him at Ascot. But under a lovely ride and to track, he clearly excelled. That he came back to life here.
The way he moved through the race was. This is when he produces his best form. He needs to settle. He needs to. But he was close enough, as I think Annalisa Balding had said, that they told the instructions were to be close, but to have cover. But Charlie, the feeling that Rob Hornby must have got here, because this was the biggest win for him, to be travelling as this. I think he even said it. He was everything was going too well at one point.
I mean, it was a really, really good ride, because what you were saying, that instructions of be close enough, but make sure you have cover on a tricky, as in and that makes it tough. It's a ride of real maturity, and when we were talking earlier about the apprenticeship scheme within racing, I mean, the Baldings, they do it right, don't they? I mean, it's a constant roll call of the who's of the weighing room, and they're all taught to conduct themselves right, and it's no wonder that time and time again they're producing top level jockeys.
Well, that was a super performance from horse and rider. We'll get your thoughts in just a second, because we're delighted to have Rob Hornby on. Morning, Rob.
Good morning. Morning, Richie. Morning, all.
I hope you're enjoying watching back that race as much as we... Actually, to be fair, you're going to enjoy it more than we did, watching Pavoyne win yesterday. Just describe your feelings as you were travelling so well. What was going through your mind?
Well, it was incredible, really. The race was just going so smoothly. He was coming into the race at the right time, and I almost thought this is too good to be true. To be travelling, coming into the last furlong, pushing the button yet. I was just waiting for something to go wrong, and thank God it didn't.
When you knew you were going to be riding him in the John Smith's Cup and going to the races yesterday, did you feel that he was back to his best? Did you feel it was just a blip, and the horse that was going to turn up yesterday at York was the best of Pavoyne?
Definitely. I mean, he's obviously well proven on the track there, having won course and distance, which is so important, with that form coming into the race. And home, and Andrew places these horses so well for the big occasion and the big days. And like I say, everyone was very happy with him at home. He was coming in great form, and it was just fantastic.
Well, the one thing we've been chatting about this morning, Rob, is the fact that they prepare their horses for the big occasions, to prepare their riders as well. Just give us a little bit of insight into your time there and what it's done for you as a rider and as a person.
Yeah, massively. I mean, Andrew Balding, so good to me. I started down there at 16 years of age, and my first job in flat racing. And it's been, they've been so good to me, giving me so many of my big successes, and I can never thank them enough. And it's part of the furniture now. It's been kind of 8 years down there, and it's just great to be connected with such a great yard. And his record with jockeys speaks for itself, having seen so many great people come through. So it was always the place to be. It's paid off, definitely.
And what's it like with the other riders there? Because obviously there are a few that have come through the ranks. Obviously there's Oisin Murphy who's making headlines now, but others that are there, is there a strong camaraderie between?
Yeah, massively, and I think that's what makes it such a great place, because it's competitive and you're always trying to improve every day. But everyone gets on so well. I remember when I was down there, when I first arrived, Murphy, Daniel Muscat, Kieran Schumacher, we were all there at the same sort of time, fighting for rides and trying to get on the ladder and get the leg up on the horses, and I think that is so important. We're all the same, battling for the same sort of rides, which we were all great friends and wanted the best for each other, but also it kept us sharp and kept us improving, I think, definitely.
Well, fantastic advertisement for your skills yesterday. Before you go, just wanted to ask you about what you think this horse could do, because I know he's had a couple of goes at a higher level pattern races this season, but it does seem that a big field, a strong gallop and decent ground like he got at York yesterday is right up his street. Could he potentially in a sort of pattern race style race where you've got a smaller field, perhaps not quite the same sort of gallop?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is important. His race style is, you know, to get him handy enough with cover at a good and hope for a good pace in the race, which a big field like yesterday is important. I mean, I'm sure that Andrew has a plan and will campaign him in the right way. But like yesterday, it just all went, you know, so smooth. He just showed his class, and that's why I do think he can transfer it to a higher level, because he is a high class performer, and he showed a really impressive turn of foot there yesterday. So no, he could, you know, keep going.
Yeah, well done, and hopefully, well, who knows, next time he runs, Sylvester Isuzu might have to go elsewhere again. You might be back on board. Rob, thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on that success yesterday.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well done to Rob Hornby, who rode the Smith's Cup yesterday. More chat coming up in the studio in just a moment with my guest, but we're heading back now to Newmarket once again to join Tom Stanley.
Dr. Stephen Parisienne and I just walking in from the Rothschild yard, where it's fantastic that you've got those there, first of all, the stars on the track who are now off it that the public can come and see.
What's marvellous about Palace House is that the sheer breadth of the offer here. We've got world-class art across the way in the of the old Charles II Palace. We've got fantastic displays all around the yard.
You've also got, which fills me with fear, you've also got the Equicizer in that room there.
It's great fun. It's also a bit terrifying if it's on gallop.
I've been put through my paces on there, Stephen. But the point of what you have to offer here, the difference is you've got the art, you've got the horses out of that, but you've also got, this really feels like a sort of education facility just behind the glass behind me.
There's so much to see and do. As you say, we've got the wonderful retraining of racehorses in the backyard, and what a great story that is. So we really have got something for everyone.
It felt when it was opened, I was here for the opening a few years ago now, that there was a real need for this. But it doesn't just happen. There's huge investment gone into this to make it look as it does now, the exhibitions you have. But it felt, given the horse racing at the history in the centre of this town, that a place like this was needed. Yeah,
the horse racing industry deserves this museum. It's about Newmarket, of course, but also it's about all of racing. It's about horses. It's a wonderful facility that I think not only reflects the history of horse racing right back from the 17th century, but also introduces some visitors to racing. So I hope that coming here will encourage some people to actually go racing for the first time.
Well, and I suppose, and we talk about where horse racing sits within the sporting world, but the importance here is it's the Heritage Centre for Horse Racing and sporting art as well. So people with a sport interest can come in and be introduced themselves to horse racing.
Yeah, if you like, it's a fun way into the industry. Pace their own leisure, find out things. It's educational, it's entertaining. It just shows the whole breadth of what racing and the equine world can offer.
And I suppose as well, given that the town it is a horse racing town, but also daily lives not involved in horse racing in this town, but this is a function for them as well. It's a place they can come and relax.
Very much so. We want this to be a focus for the town of Newmarket to help regenerate the town centre. It'll bring visitors in, but also it's somewhere for locals to come and have a relax, have a look around the displays at their own leisure. And
that will happen. It's not open yet. It's worth pointing that out, I think, that will happen at opening time. Just with regard to the museum itself, I often, in my place like this opens, that's job done. You've opened it, great stuff, but you've got to constantly generate, haven't you? You've got to keep innovating as well. You've got to keep moving on attractions for people to come and see. I mean, how difficult is that for yourself?
Well, you're absolutely right, Tom. You need to refresh what's here. There's a reason to come back. So one of the key drivers of that here, as well as the changing horses in the retraining of racehorses yard, is exhibitions. So we're launching a programme of big name exhibitions every 3 months so people can come see something completely different.
How proud are you as a team of from that vision initially to what you have now and what you've achieved here, and also that balance of historical, which you have with the old palace behind you, but it's got that modern feel as well, and the exhibitions that you put.
It's a wonderful resource for the racing industry, for Newmarket. This place was derelict a few years ago. It's a wonderful achievement. It celebrates the royal involvement with Newmarket. I think that's really important. Let's look back at the royal history of Charles II. Was the fourth, who was a great racing enthusiast, and of course Her Majesty now is a marvellous supporter of Newmarket. So it's a great royal story which we want to celebrate here too.
And literally right in the centre of town. I remember coming, as you say, it was derelict when it was sort of hard hats and high vis, and not here, but here it is, and
doesn't it look good? Doesn't it look good?
Fantastic, Stephen. Thanks ever so much.
My pleasure.
Enjoyed that. Thank you.
Luck on sponsored by Al Basti Equewell, Dubai.
At every moment on my journey, there has only been one focus. Winning. Last year was great to spur me on.
And the lion really roars today!
But now the hunger grows inside. To win more.
All hard, and the Tin Man has his day in the sun at Haydon.
And more. I look around at the champions and champions to be.
These will fight it out.
And they inspire me.
And they're on their way.
You have to work harder than everyone else.
Lightning Spear and the Shane Murphy get through and have won.
The hunger turning to fire.
They're off.
Fueling me to work harder.
Racing up the wheel towards the line. The lion roars a stand up.
And to go faster.
She's gonna win the Kipco 1000 Guinness.
To be disciplined.
They're practicing together now. They fight tooth and nail.
To be patient.
As they now run inside the line. He's finishing strongly.
To be a champion.
Here comes the winning line.
Kipco British Champion Series, showcasing the finest flat racing.
Luck on Sunday, proudly sponsored by Al Basti Equewell, Dubai.
Studio, where this morning on Luck on Sunday I'm joined by Dave Hall, Charlie Post and Eve Johnson-Horton, chatting about all things racing. A little bit later on in the show, at about 11 o'clock, Tom Stanley is heading to Freemason Lodge for a visit with Sir Michael Stout. So we look forward to seeing what the and Sir Michael Stout as well. But right now we're going to reflect on one of Sir Michael Stout's big wins of recent times. It happened just early this week with Voracious in the Falmouth, who was given, Eve, a super ride by...
He's getting better and better, Asheen, isn't he? I mean, that's a statement of the obvious, but he's getting particularly good in front, I think. Particularly good in front. And he just got it absolutely, again, got the fractions right, which is really hard to do, and it's what the top jockeys do, and he's absolutely spot on.
The other important factor with this race, I felt, was she settled. She hasn't always settled this season, Voracious, Charlie, and that made a big difference when he had a little bit left up his sleeve at the end of the race.
Completely. I mean, a bit like what we were talking, rhythm and stuff like that, as in racing is all about rhythm, and the fact that he's managed to get her to drop the bridle and conserve energy, and he's almost riding a waiting race in front now, isn't he? Like filling up the whole way, and that's meant that come the business end of the race, he's got enough reserve to hold on, yeah.
We spent quite a lot of this season praising Sir Michael Stout because of numerous excellent training efforts. But what about this filly who, early part of the season, slow to come to hand, kept in training as an older filly? How good has he been with her?
He's been brilliant. It's a huge win this season. She's been kept in training to hopefully pick up a Group 1, and it's job done in July. And as you say, through the early parts of the campaign, it looked like she might not be quite up to the grade, but it was telling in the interview with Sir Michael afterwards that he said just recently she'd really come to life. He knew that she was cherry ripe here. She'd arrived at a physical peak. She was as well they were going to get her. She was given a fantastic ride. This was probably her day in the sun. or the drizzles, it looks a bit looking at the camera there, but it's worked out to perfection. It's a huge win that as breeders, I mean, Cheveley Park are wonderful supporters of the sport. They've now got another facility right there.
I was going to ask you about the strength of this race, Eve. One Master, she's an excellent filly. So's I Can Fly. How good a Falmouth was that?
I don't think it's the strongest Falmouth we've seen, but it doesn't matter. They don't care. It doesn't say in on the pedigree, won a Group 1, but not... She's won a Group 1, and that's all that matters.
That's the exact outlook I expect they're taking, Charlie, surely.
Oh, completely, yeah. I mean, I just think it would be good though if they did write that in the comments in a pedigree book, or won a Group or whatever, as in take a bit of doing. But for them, this was D-Day, and horse was trained to perfection, given a lovely ride, and as Eve and everyone said, they won't care a jot.
From a analytical perspective, Dave, that wasn't the strongest Falmouth of all time. How would you have viewed?
No, it wasn't. When you looked at it in advance, you didn't get a buzz from I can't wait to see. We didn't have the Guineas winner with the 4 lines that were brought in. I mean, the favourite was the Queen Anne third. She had a huge. It wasn't the greatest Falmouth of all time, but it presented an opportunity for Voracious to strike at Group 1 level. I don't think it'd be a Falmouth that will be long remembered, but it was a significant one for connections.
They've mentioned possible go at the Nassau. You'd think the Nassau would be more up her?
The Nassau looks the more obvious one for her, against keep your own sex. I'd be very happy if she did, because I'm off to the Sussex, and less opposition is better. Fillies bloom. They start to bloom at this time of year, and obviously she wasn't giving the right signals early on. They went through the motions. They ran her in it. But suddenly a little bit of sun on her back, and she's gone, now I'm ready.
Filly for the rest of the season ahead. More success for Mark Johnston earlier in the week, courtesy of Communique in the Princess of Wales Stakes. A horse, Charlie, who obviously he loves Newmarket, whatever it is, or the July or the Rowley Mile, he seems to enjoy being there.
Very much so. I mean, but you see it time and again, don't you? Horses have preferences, just like we do, and this track obviously plays to his strengths. Again, I thought it was another good ride on the day, and I mean, for me, the biggest question is Massar, isn't it? Like, what's happened to Massar, and where's he go from here?
Yeah,
really?
well, we will be talking more about Massar a little bit later on the show, but the performance earlier in the season when he won the Jockey Club. I think a lot of people were saying, well, Defoe ran below his best and Communique's taken advantage of it. I guess, in light of this performance, you're saying maybe he would have given him a pretty serious contest.
You definitely would. I mean, it was a meeting which suited horses that went forward, wasn't it? You needed to be up there at the July meeting. But he's a tremendous record there, and he's a really, really good horse. It was interesting, now Mark's coming on the show later, that initial thoughts seemed to be it would be on the continent somewhere. They're talking of going to Germany with him. He's a horse that's just come up short going into grade so far, but this was a really, really taking performance. I mean, the seconds run a huge race as well, and it's short of excuses. He's just given okay. This is his race course. This race looked absolutely tailored. It's easy to say in hindsight. What was he, 11-1 outside of the field or something through the morning? He was a big price, but he got the job done. He's a typical Mark Johnson horse, isn't he?
Yeah.
We touched upon it earlier with Aidan O'Brien. That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
The form figures, it's not trying to get a row of pretty ones on a race car. They don't mind the odd 0-0-0 there.
Yeah.
They'll test their mettle in with horses anywhere. And this horse might have come up short on other days, but this was another day in the sun for him. And too.
Just keep an eye on the horse that's in the yellow, David Simcock's horse, Desert Encounter, because I think he's got some grand plans for him once again, which he did, and he ran an encouraging race, Eve, the way he moved into it, travelling quite nicely.
Yeah, he did. They went very slow early doors. Helped Communique because he was absolutely in the right place. I thought Andrew's horse, again, Sheen knows he needs further, but didn't go mad on him, and he stayed on really, really well. I think both Massar, why don't they put a pacemaker in for Massar? He needs a pace to run at. I don't understand it.
Well,
they absolutely crawled in that race, and it just didn't play to either the second strengths or Massar's strengths, in my opinion.
Another horse who didn't play to and other runner in the race, and I still think he's a big player in the Sky Bet Eber further down the line.
And Mark Johnston is on the line. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning.
Well, we've been singing your praises all morning, so I hope you've been enjoying it if you've had time, because obviously every morning is busy for you. But let's start with Communique and your reaction to that success. I know afterwards you're obviously delighted, but you've had a bit of time to reflect on it now. How good do you think he was?
Yeah, no, obviously it was great. It was probably a career. But, you know, everybody was asking the same questions after his last Group 2 win, and, you know, sort of suggesting it was that either he'd run above form or the others had run below form. We've thought the horse was this level at least since the end of last season, and so it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Interestingly, the stewards asked me after the race in form, and frankly, at the time I couldn't remember what went on in the Hardwick. I then remembered that, you know, in the Hardwick the horse lost a shoe in the race. That was reported by the veterinary officer. Then we were told he lost the shoe coming out of the stalls and was never travelling. Now, I reported that to the stewards. They didn't announce it, and they've still put on the BHA reports that I could offer after the race. You know, it just makes a mockery of all this business of making excuses for horses.
Well, that's as someone's just saying in my ear. I'm not taking credit. That's poor Communique. But with Communique now, Dave was saying that I think you mentioned a possibility of going abroad to have a go at a Group 1 race with him.
Yeah, I think that was the first thing that sprang to mind. John O'Malley is coming up tomorrow night, and no doubt that this will be one of the main things we'll be discussing. On the one hand, you can say he's won 2 Group 2s. It's important for stallion career to try and get a Group 1 under his belt. On the other hand, he's probably the sort of horse that we should be treating as a racehorse, not as a potential stallion. Not that he isn't a potential stallion, but first and foremost, that the owner can continue to enjoy. That still probably means that the future lies abroad. There's a couple of Group 1 entries in Germany, and then there's the very exciting autumn races like the Canadian International, Japan Cup. Not absolutely sure, but Australia might be worth mentioning as well.
Well, he's a lovely horse. Is he as straightforward at home as he appears to be on the racecourse? Because he just looks so willing.
Absolutely, very straightforward.
Mark, at the opposite end, you had a 2-year-old in Raffles Prize who was immensely impressive earlier in the week in the Duchess of Cambridge, following on from her win at Royal Ascot. So had she improved at home since? No idea. Frankly, you win the Queen Mary. We don't go galloping at home to find out whether it's improved after that. So she hasn't done anything fast since in between races, and she won't do either unless she was to have a fairly long break between runs. So I think Frankie seemed to think she'd come on again. I think she was only having her 3rd run, so I think she probably did come on, but it wasn't something we were testing at home. And what sort of plans would you have for her? Head to York, maybe?
I think it's more likely that she'll go to the Prix Mornay. This is one where, particularly very early in a horse's career, I'm a great believer in trying to progress through the ranks. She's now won 2 Group 2s, including one carrying a penalty. The Lowther's a magnificent race. I love it. At the same time, it's another Group 2, and it's questionable whether that's going to add to her value, whereas the Prix Mornay certainly would add to her value. And it's a long wait in the UK for a fillies Group 1 or a suitable Group 1. So I think the favourite race at the moment is the Prix Mornay.
And long term, you know what we're like in the media. We always think about their classic career in June of their 2. Would she have the potential to be a 1,000 guineas filly for you?
Yeah, of course she has. You know, she's. It's not just the media. We all start thinking it, and everybody's been comparing her with Attraction, who and what's now the Duchess of Cambridge, but was the Cherry Hinton, and she went on to win the Guineas. With Attraction, it was quite different because her 2-year-old career was cut short.
Yeah.
And she never got a chance to go to something like the Chieveley Park. But yeah, we've got it in the back of our mind. There's no reason why this filly wouldn't go on and run in the Guineas next year. Okay,
lots of success, but we're going to sort of narrow it down. And the other big success yesterday for you at Newmarket came courtesy of Vale of Kent. And in the course of discussion this morning, we were all suggesting how it is wonderful to see these horses just come out and race. What were your thoughts about your horse's performance yesterday and the rhythm that he got into from an early stage?
Yeah, well, I wasn't there. I was at Ascot, so watching it on television. But it was tremendous. Great the way he looked like he was headed. I wouldn't say that I was necessarily panicking when he was headed. I still thought we had a chance, and we see Frankie at his coolest. Travelling well, I could see that when he was headed, he hadn't panicked. So it was a tremendous performance, and great the way he was pulling away at the finish. And a number of options mentioned afterwards. Which way are you going with him? I don't know. Yeah, he's a horse that he runs plenty. I've got no sort of big race targets in mind. We'll just take them one at a time. If the horse is well, he'll run. The horses, as you say, the last 2 weeks, believe you've had 105 runners at 26 winners. Is that right? I have no idea. I haven't counted them. Well, and who, by the way, Mark, if you don't mind me asking, who does the Twitter updates? Say 100 and... Usually, whichever racing secretary's in the office, usually it's Kathy who's in the afternoon. She has to tape all the races. She'll watch the race and then send out a text message to the connections, congratulating them, and then put it on Twitter. Well, Kathy is a very, very busy lady. in your overtime, to rack up all those Mark Johnston winners through the year. I mean, I know you say you don't count them, Mark, but the way things have gone in the last couple of weeks, quite incredible for anybody. Yeah, no, of course we do count them. As you know, we're great believers. We have targets, and each yard manager has their own targets, and we look at our stats every week at our Friday meeting. But I just haven't counted what there's been in the last 2 weeks. Particularly as it keeps changing every. Well, Mark, thank you very much for joining us. Congratulations on all that success. Fabulous stuff. Thank you very much. Superb stuff from Mark Johnston over the last couple of weeks. 26 winners, operating at a 25%. Take a break here on Lock on Sunday. When we come back, we'll be hearing from Carl Berg talking about Lawrence.
Luck on Sunday, proudly sponsored by World Dubai.
Do you love to stay up to date with all the latest racing action? Do you want exclusive access to breaking news and competitions? Are you looking to connect with fellow racing fans? Look no further. Social media channels feature everything you love about racing TV and more, right at your fingertips. Stay ahead of the game, even when you're on the move, with breaking news, fast results and racing replays. Available on our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and with regular social media competitions, polls and discussions, you can connect with thousands of like-minded community members every single day. Stay in the know with 24/7 updates, available on your laptop, smartphone or tablet. There's on the Racing TV social media channels, so follow us today.
Luck on Sunday, proudly sponsored by Al Basti Equewell, Dubai.
So Carl Burke alongside me now. We've had a look at Lawrence just walking around for us. First of all, how is she?
She's fine, Tom. I mean, obviously everybody's very disappointed that we're for the Falmouth, but you know, she's still got 4 or 5 good targets. So it's not a serious injury by any means. It's just a frustrating one.
What specifically was the injury? How did it become apparent? Was she notably lame when she was?
No, it was more after she exercised. About an hour later, once she cools off, she's just tightening up on a near hind, a left hind, and at first, you know, we were worried, was it the hock? You know, that she just sprained the hock or done something there. Turns out that it was just the tendon sheath over the curb on that hock. It's just slightly inflamed. Now, how she's done that, we're not 100% sure, but you know, the tendons within the sheath are 100% fine. You know, we've x-rayed that, but it's just an injury that we're just going to have to give a little bit of time to. It's certainly not career-threatening in any way.
I know this must seem an obvious thing to ask, and when any horse has a setback, it's frustrating. But when you initially notice something isn't right at her, automatically you must think, not her. But thankfully, it's not as serious as it was first feared, potentially.
For sure, yeah. I mean, it's probably affects Lucy, who lives, sleeps and dreams about Lauren's 24/7. She was a little bit upset to start with, and what made it more frustrating is we've had 3 or 2 good years with absolutely 0 problems with her, you know, through a 2-year-old and 3-year-old career, and then certainly the start of this year and going into Ascot. There's a couple of minor little things, but nothing that we were worried about. We're just wondering now whether they caused her to favour herself, and maybe that's just she's put a false step. The vets described it as probably in a gallop she's put a false step down on that tendon sheath around the curb. So that's where we are with it. We're well on top of it. She's, as you can see there, she's walking out great now. She'll be ridden tomorrow, and we start a ridden exercise, and hopefully we'll be fine for.
Looks great, and that's all systems go for the Rothschild back against her own sex back to France as well.
It is, yeah. I mean, the good thing is she's very fit. You know, she looks fantastic. Her weight's good. So although she's obviously missed a few pieces of work, it's not the be all and end all. Clean-winded filly. You know, she's won first time out and finished second in the Guineas first time out as a 3-year-old. Won first time out as a 2-year-old. Finished second in the Lockage first time out this year. You know, she's a filly that you can get to a reasonable degree of fitness very quickly.
And did you and John and the team come into with the season as mapped out as it could be, given what you know about her? And has anything changed based upon injury or what's happened so far this season? Is there a point that you'd like to end up this season?
Yeah, I think. I mean, John and Jess very sportingly obviously kept her in training because the easy thing, or sell her, and they've kept her in training to enjoy her really, and for that reason, yeah, we gave it a crack against the boys in the Lockage, and the plan was always to go to the Queen, and after that, presuming she ran well in the. So, in my mind though, and I said to John, if we can win one more Group 1, and albeit if it's against her own sex, to win at Group 1s at 2, 3 and 4 is a huge plus for her CV, and I still think we're very capable of. Just obviously very frustrating that we're going to miss the first fillies one, but hopefully we'll be there for the Rothschild. After that, we always sort of said that the Rothschild or the Falmouth would have shown us whether we needed to step back up in trip. The Prix Jean Romanet at Deauville, which is 3 weeks after the Rothschild, as a step up if we wanted to. I can't see that happening now. I think if we get to the Rothschild, I would think we'll bypass the straight to the Matron. If we don't get to the Rothschild by any chance, which I hope is not the case, we'd have to review it. But I'd be surprised if we run her back at over 2,000 metres next time.
Do you foresee she'll, even if she gets her Group 1, have a full season. You want to give her a full season and then make a decision off the back of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, after the matron, you know, hopefully we end up at the Sun Chariot, and then the final swan song, all being well, will be Breeders' Cup.
Now that would be fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. The Breeders' Cup, which we muted the idea last year, but you know, we just felt she'd been on the go. She was trained early, obviously, for the Guineas, attack at the Guineas. We didn't run till the 18th of May this year, so she started off a prep a lot later with the view of form.
So, Lauren's obviously sadly missed out on the Falmouth with the Rothschild and then the Matron, and maybe Breeders' Cup all in her future this season. Which brings us back to Accidental Agent, who we saw back yesterday, came out and didn't run too badly. What would be the plan with him now? Where would you want?
We're going to Sussex.
Sussex?
Yeah, he's going to be running this year, barring it's an instant accident, obviously.
Okay, and you were talking about, you know, yesterday's race was round a bend. What about the track for him?
He's run okay. He's run well at Goodwood. We might even put a bit of headgear on.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to get him to travel a bit early doors. Give Charlie a few more options, you know.
Would you give him a few spins in the headgear at home? Make sure.
Yeah,
that
we'll probably jump him out the stalls in the headgear, I think.
Okay, excellent. Good news about Accidental Agent. Look forward to seeing him. Since he was a 2-year-old, I've always loved that horse.
He's a beauty. He is a beauty.
He's a really handsome, flashy sort of individual that I like. Right, we are heading back to Newmarket once again, and Tom Stanley will be taking charge of the reins.
Back with Stephen then at Palace House, and we've come in a George Stubbs exhibition called Anatomist. We're going to see why very shortly, but I'd just touch on this oil painting to my right. I said to you, this is one of his famous works, is it? And you quite rightly said, they're all famous works. It shows my ignorance, but there we are. Tell us.
Stubbs is astonishing. He was so far ahead of his time. This is an incredibly evocative work. All the loan works here are from America, from the British Arts Centre in New Haven, Connecticut. Really, really pleased and privileged to have this picture of the hound very early in the morning with the gamekeeper. What an evocative picture. The doe looks right at us and its death throes. It's quite like so much in Stubbs. It's quite unsettling and unnerving.
How do you go about something like this in Newmarket and securing that loan as part of an exhibition? I mean, how tall an order is it for you?
Yeah, what we're doing with our exhibition programme is really planning far ahead, 4 or 5 years. That's what you need to do if you want great works like this. Royal Collection, for example, will be working with Tate, the National Gallery, and also with other overseas partners to plan exhibitions going really over the next few years. You've got to get those loan requests in early. You've got to get your vision early. So it's not next week. Yeah, we are planning a long way ahead.
And this is called Anatomist, as you say, and I think the pictures, the diagrams on our left show this perfectly. And you talk about Stubbs being so far ahead of his time. This highlights that, does it?
I mean, literally and metaphorically got beneath the skin of humankind and animals. Shown here, this is so far ahead of its time. Here he depicts a human looking like a monkey. This is 60 years before Darwin, 60 years before. Even more shocking for people around 1800 is here he's got a monkey pose looking like a human being. This is that would have shocked so many people. Again, this is decades before the theory of evolution. So in his analysis of form, he's thinking, wait a minute, actually, this is where we come from.
And it's called Monkey Standing Anterior View. And you talk about his analysis of form. I mean, and you talk about him literally getting under the skin. I mean, he's not just sat there he's not there, is he? He's got to have seen that in all its glory to be able to make that connection. That's what an artist of his time was doing.
That's what makes him special. Slightly odd. He dissected corpses, animals. We can see on the other side there is which belong to the local zoo. And when he heard the tiger had died, off he went down to Pidcock's, bought the tiger, and here we see in various states of dissection.
I mean, that is opposite the monkey-human comparison we've got over the far side. And again, this is people of the time wouldn't have been used to seeing anything like this.
Not at all, not at all. It really is something. I mean, his house was revolting. It was full of dissected animals. and stank appallingly. But he really did want to analyse exactly so he could understand animals, and in particular, of course, horses.
Now, this is all part of a learning process for people that come in as well, and you've used this as an exhibition to build into for families to come, how they can learn about anatomy as well and other things. So that's developing over the summer, isn't
Absolutely.
it?
What we've got across the summer is what we've called our Summer of Science. The Stub Show is a great way of launching a whole programme of activities aimed at families to get them to, have fun, but at the same time learn a bit more about how we're made, how we're put together, how horses are put together. So that will continue all the way through the summer.
And that's in association with Shabwell, and that's families who can come in and get quite hands-on and
Absolutely.
learning
We've
about
got
science.
laboratories, so yeah, there's lots for them to do. Don their little white coats and become proper scientists.
And going forward, just other things perhaps aside from this we've got to look forward. I noticed there's the horseball event coming up. Now, I don't know if anybody's seen horseball. At Open Weekend, I think the year before last. It's very fast flowing. It's very fun to watch, but it's not polo, is it? But it's sort of built out of that, and it's people throwing around a ball on horseback.
I think there's Quidditch on horseback.
Yeah.
I mean, it is great fun. Sport. That's coming here on Saturday the 27th, so not long. Yeah, that should be a great family day out.
Yeah, that's Saturday the 27th, so if you can get along to that, please, it will be a great day out. Stephen, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Love to see you.
I can confirm it smells nicer in it did in George Stubbs' living room.
A lot nicer.
Thanks, Stephen. Great
My
stuff.
pleasure.
Lots more still to come from Tom Stanley, including a visit to Freemason Lodge to see Sir Michael Stout. But coming up next on Luck on Sunday, it's this week's Talking Points. Okay, the panel is poised. The list is now available to the great public. And we are going to start with the world rankings, which were released earlier this week in the world. Dave, I'm going to come to you. Understandably, Crystal Ocean is right at the top of the list. Do you believe in that?
There was a small group of people applauding the fact that he topped the list. You were leading it with Sir Michael Stout and the Watto. Very admirable, isn't he? But I'd be number on horses, that's what handicappers do. But the fact that Enable's number isn't as high as Crystal Ocean's does somewhat surprise me. She's got the chance to put that right, of course, at Ascot in a couple of weeks' time. Beauty Generation in Hong Kong, the world's best miler. I know, how could you compare? We've got Winks in Australia, Thunderstone Dubai. My first reaction, I mean, we've only just seen, you said the talking points have just been revealed, they've just landed on our lap as well. I was surprised to see Crystal Ocean topping the list, as admirable and talented as he is.
If you're a big fan.
I'm a huge fan of Crystal Ocean, but I'm also a huge fan of Enable. But is it just on that one performance that she's done this year, rather than her overall handicap rating?
Yeah.
And so maybe his performances have stacked up a little bit higher. I'm assuming at the end of the year, unfortunately, I don't think he's.
Okay. Charlie, what are your thoughts on Crystal Ocean being the best racehorse in the world?
I would struggle to believe that, to be honest, as in much as, again, that I love Crystal Ocean, but I also kind of think, does anyone really care about? I don't know, as in, I love Enable. I think for me, she's the best, so I'm going to go with her.
I think, in fairness, a lot of people would agree that Enable is the best, but I guess it is nice to have something to equate all these horses together. It comes down to opinions, and no matter what the rankings say, I still will fancy Crystal Ocean. Maybe I wouldn't actually put money on him to beat Enable, but you still believe in these horses.
Enable doesn't run as much. Crystal Ocean, he just keeps coming out and running, and that, maybe he gets points for that.
Yes. Well, we'll find out, because they are going to clash, hopefully, in the King George. So that is around the corner. Yes. Now, a horse who could potentially have clashed with them in the King George, and that certainly seemed to be the plan, out may not run in the King George, is Massard. Now, this came up earlier in conversation, so I'm going to hand over to Eve for your thoughts on what should happen with Massard. And it's a slightly precarious position for you as a trainer to be in, but what would you do?
Well, I mean, if I had, I would at least try him with a pacemaker. They didn't go fast enough for him. I mean, I take Mark Johnston's point. Maybe his horse was the best on the day. I'm not decrying that, but they did not go fast enough. You could see him, he was fighting for his head all the way, he never got them, and he needs a fast pace to run at. So if you're going to run him again, put a pacemaker in.
Charlie?
I can understand these sentiments completely. For me, I think it's a long way back for the horse right now. I mean, and hey, they've got to do something. Maker angle probably makes a heck of a lot of sense because he looks a shadow of the horse that won the Derby. It's 2 disappointing runs back now. He's obviously had an injury and all of that, and maybe we just won't ever see him back to his best.
Obviously, the line from Charlie Apple, which you can to His Highness to make the decision, but why persevere?
Why not? I mean, he wasn't throwing the towel in, Charlie, afterwards. They obviously still think, from what they see at home, there's a racehorse still there. And the Royal Ascot return wasn't devoid of promise. He was out wide in a muddling race at Newmarket. Good. I think the next run will be the definitive run. Charlie's initial response was to go to 10 furlongs, which he didn't look like a 10 furlong horse in beating Roaring Lion in the Derby, but he looked a rattlingly good colt that day, didn't he? And the form of that's worked out. Like, why? He's got beaten a horse race. Why not give him one more chance?
Because the thing that wrecks my head is that Blue Point has just won 2 Group 1s and is at the peak of his powers, and he's retired. And the Derby winner, who's had an injury that's been off the course, has come back and ran okay at Ascot, yes, but then the Prince of Wales Stakes. And he's going to carry on.
Well, should every horse
Why
runs
did
badly?
we don't know why Blue Point retired.
Yeah,
Agree.
okay. Fair enough. We don't know. Okay. Right. Ryan Moore has been in the news in a couple of articles, a couple of suggesting that he's not been at his best this year. Can we put that discussion to bed now, Dave?
I think he made a great statement to himself, didn't he, on 10 Sovereigns yesterday. There's no doubt he's had a frustrating season in terms of he's found himself on the wrong ballad occasions. I think if you look back at the Investec Oaks, the Coronation Cup, the other defeats for Pink Dogwood and Kew Gardens, they would have been very frustrating. But I wouldn't have thought Aidan O'Brien's reaching for the telephone directory to find other jockeys to bring in to replace him. He's just a phenomenal jockey. To ask the question, that's what it's about. And I know Jack Keane, the journalist at Sun Racing, who wrote the initial piece, and that's your job. You have to provoke opinion, provoke debate, and that's exactly what he's done. Is Ryan Moore enjoying a stellar season? No, but it is only July, and there's an awful lot of water to flow. He's still a top flight jockey, yes. Is he a worse jockey than he was this time last year? No. And I think that this particular story will very quickly disappear. But given the numbers, the stats that were there at the time, he was perfectly right to ask the question.
Charlie, such fine margins at the level that Ryan Moore operates the other can mean, obviously, people view it with a negative prism and a positive. In your opinion, Ryan Moore is as good as there is out there?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's like, unfortunately, as well, you're dealing with a guy, like, he runs multiple runners in all these big Group 1s. It's going to be impossible to get it right all the other time. Was there a chance maybe the race at Epsom didn't quite pan out how he would have liked in hindsight? Possibly. Does that mean that he's a worse jockey now than he was last year? Definitely. Ryan Moore, to me, is above everyone, and I think he's an absolute top-notcher, and we're so very lucky to have him.
Eve, you've got 12 seconds.
He's the best. Why would you put anyone else on?
You don't need any more than that. We've got 8 seconds to spare on the phone. One of the best jockeys out there, without question, and of course enjoyed a Group 1 success yesterday with 10 Sovereigns. Now, 10 Sovereigns is a 3-year-old. Who is the best 3-year-old out there, and how good are they, Eve?
Well, when we... panic attack, I can't remember what won the Guineas, I can't remember what won the Derby, but now you've refreshed my memory for me. I mean, 10 Sovereigns was clearly very good at his trip. Magna Grecia's been a bit disappointing since the Guineas. He obviously went wrong. I think very good in Ireland. Yep. I know for a fact he came back and he was lame. He pulled quite a lot of muscles in Ascot. I think he's one to throw into the mix.
Great. No one's mentioned Anthony Van Dyke, Annapurna. I mean, who's the best 3-year-old for you?
I think the fact that we are many probably shows that they're not a vintage bunch, are they? You know, as in, I think after yesterday, 10 Sovereign's got to be right up there. I mean, it was the most explosive performance I've seen by a 3-year-old, and if he could go on and dominate the sprint division now for the rest of the year, he'd be a worthy contender, because right now, at a mile and a mile and a half, they all seem to beat each other.
I think it's a fair bet that the answer to this question lies at Ballydoyle somewhere. And I've a sneaking feeling it might just be Japan. Now, I could be made to look very foolish in about time, because he runs in the Grand Prix de Paris tonight, but I was very taken with him in the King Edward VII. I thought that was a really authoritative performance. He was a colt that they've always thought an awful lot of. He went to the Dante, he wasn't quite ready. He wasn't quite there in the Derby, but ran a big race. I don't think he took a step forward. we're going to have to come up with a number that's like the world rankings for the best 3-year-old. I think he's got the chance of posting a big number. If he progresses they're expecting to and goes and lines up against Enabling and Arc and even shakes it up, finishes second, I think he's going to post a high number. 10 Sovereigns is probably the answer, but I think the best middle distance 3-year-old.
What about Too Darn Hot and Calix? Calix is going to come back, and the Calix that finished off last season and the one that won first time up this season, surely there's still a chance he might be the best of the sprinters, or Too Darn Hot. I mean,
he did look good again. I think he's probably not as good a 3-year-old as he was a 2-year-old.
It'd be fascinating had he been in yesterday.
Yeah,
that July Cup.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see a showdown.
Yeah.
Well, we all know Sangaris is going to finish up the season as the best 3-year-old. As the Sky Bet York Stakes at York in a couple of weeks' time.
Lift off.
Next up, pre-race inquiries. Now, Dennis Hogan, Irish trainer, was the subject of a pre-race inquiry, not for the first time. Dave, in recent times, trainers have been the focus has been on them for a pre-race inquiry by the BHA.
Yeah, the inquiry is to try and ascertain riding instructions, the plan for the horse that day, and it's often intelligence led from the better through the morning for a horse that wouldn't initially stand out on the page as being a horse that was going to go 5-2 favourite, for example. And I can understand why the BHA do it, because I think you're sort of saying, well, why is this horse being backed? What's the story behind it? What are you planning to do it differently to the previous 3 races? But it's a murky one, isn't it? And I don't know how many of these take place. The ones that we know about are the ones that are a bit publicised because the trainer's gone to the media and said, look, I'm getting sick of this. Every time I come to England, I'm being hauled in before the race. And why is it happening? How often does it happen? What is the trigger for it? Is it purely market intelligence? What is the trigger point for these inquiries to take place?
Is it the case that the BHA's hands are tied when they don't know what's going on, but there is something that has been... They've got to ask some questions.
Why don't they just come out and say that, though? Like, as in, and actually, because, like you said, the only time we're actually hearing about it is when Dennis Hogan, or I can't remember who else it was, where came out to the press and say, I think it's outrageous that I'm being asked to give riding instructions. And the BHA just say it's standard procedure.
Yeah.
But what is the procedure and why is it triggered?
Has this ever happened? Have you ever had a pre-race inquiry?
No, I never have. But I absolutely think the BHA need to be more transparent. They like everyone else to be transparent, but they tell anyone else what they're up to. And I think that applies to an awful lot of the BHA dealings.
Completely.
They just need to come out and say, we're doing it because we've had intelligence. I would have thought it would more if they drifted rather than be backed. That's what I would have thought why you'd have a pre-race inquiry.
Sectional timings is our next subject for talking points. Now, in 2021, the plan is that all racecourses will have sectional timing. Therefore, more data for punters. It's going to require, I think, about £900,000 of funding to get this up and running. At last, question mark?
Yeah, remove the question mark. It is at last. I mean, there will be disagreement. I find it an absolutely fascinating facet to race reading. It takes the guesswork out of what you've just seen. So take the Irish Derby, for example, to try to work out what had happened. And sectional times would have told you exactly the nature of the race and the pace and how what we saw unfold. I mean, I'm very naive. I'm not from a horse background. I hadn't realised that till a few years ago how it was the fact the horses slowed. I was fastest and that horses that was visually seemed to be quickening were sprinting away from their rivals. And it's not, most races, it's a question of the horse that's slowing down the slowest that wins the race in the final furlong. But sectional time just leads to a completely different analysis of a race. It's the restrictions have it, and we are slightly behind the time. 900,000 isn't cheap, but I think it will be money well spent from a punter's perspective in particular.
Eve, do you welcome it with open arms?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. We've been having the little sectional timing things in the weight class for at least the last... I thought it just someone hadn't actually turned it on. I couldn't understand why we're carrying them, and it hasn't been used. 900,000, it's probably money well spent. Is it going to come out of prize money? Probably. You know, disappointing yet again, but we need it.
Charlie, for a long time you hear about jockeys saying, people saying jockeys have a clock in their brain. How much will this help them?
Well, it might disprove that theory, mightn't it? It could go either way. I think it's great. I mean, I think it's incredibly exciting when you second furlong or so, and you get to learn so much more. I mean, you know far more than me whether it's going to help punters to back more winners. I don't know.
Will it be as useful in jumping as it is on the flat? It's quite an
That's a
interesting
great question.
Possibly not, but it's very interesting, yeah.
Our subject for discussion is King Power Racing, and there were concerns at the end of last year about how significant their influence in British racing would be this year, but we're all happy to say it's still stronger than ever. Bittersweet day for them yesterday, obviously. Their investment being rewarded.
Absolutely. I mean, on the paper, it was a wonderful day, the 3 winners, but to lose Beat the Bank at Ascot, who's been their flag bearer and was so hard and heartbreaking to see. But the good news is they've made that impression at the top table, which is so difficult to do. We've seen people come and go over the years who've thrown millions, tens, hundreds of millions at this game to try to break in at that on that manager, and they have. They produced a masterstroke in signing Sylvester de Souza as a retained jockey. They've got a wonderful ride in place. They've got the horses with some really... They spread them around and they buy well. They don't just... They've bought yearlings, but they're buying horses from other yards still as well. The enthusiasm still seems to be there. And it's good to see. Racing needs people challenging. I mean, Coolmore are in such a dominant position and will be for many, many more years. But this sport makes such a quick impression.
Charlie, it's something that we spoke about earlier this morning. You were saying the strength King Power Racing has added to the season. We
all want competition, don't we? You don't want to see the same faces winning time in, time out, and yeah, having King Power. You know, like you said, yesterday was a bittersweet day. Mystery Power looks quite exciting, though. You know that you've seen the tragedy of Beat the Bank, but then this young horse coming onto the scene, and like long may it continue. And I also think it's a huge credit to whoever's buying them and the trainers and all that, because impression at such a high level so quickly is impressive.
Alistair Donald, Satford Donald do most of the buying.
Yeah, it's Al Donald, and the first year he was getting a lot of stick because he was spending a lot of money, and they were going, "You haven't had any Ascot winners." And I remember talking to him, and I said, "Don't worry," and he was, you know, they're not buying next year and the year after, and it's been proven, so that's really good. I mean, yesterday would have been awful. There is nothing worse than going back with an empty bridle and walking past an empty box, and my heart goes out to Andrew Balding and his team for that.
Indeed, we all send all the connections, or anyone had anything to do with that Beat the Bank. A wonderful, admirable, tough and classy racehorse sadly lost his life at Ascot yesterday, and that has been this week's Talking Points. Welcome back to Luck on Sunday. Tom Stanley's been doing some stirring stuff for us, and we'll be hoping to come back after this break. We'll be hearing from Tom with Sir Michael Stout.
Luck on Sunday, proudly sponsored by our Dubai.